This isn't just yarn. There's a stereotype that knitting is passive, domestic, quiet, safe. But if history has taught us anything, it's that needles can be just as sharp as swords. And sometimes they are the only thing that stops the doom scrolling. They force my anxious brain to focus on one single stitch instead of the entire collapsing world. Today I'm working on the Melt the Ice hat, and I'm wearing jewelry that my friend Gloria made, and well, let's just say it speaks for itself. Welcome back to Ignite Your Inner Artist. I'm Arletta. Today isn't a tutorial, it's a reckoning. Today we're talking about craftivism. Honestly, it feels like the knitting rebellion has finally begun, because this is how I make art when the world is on fire. The term craftivism was coined by Betty Greer in 2003, but the practice is ancient. It's the idea that the mere act of creating can be an act of political defiance. And it operates on 3 levels: personal, community, and political. It's the only thing keeping me even remotely sane right now. Let's start with the personal. You know I live with schizoaffective disorder. My mind is a little wild sometimes, but the world out there, worse. Way worse. Going up here? Yeah, this is Elsa. Good, there we go. Okay, let's try this again. Okay. When I facilitate NAMI support groups, we talk a lot about grounding. And this red yarn here, this isn't just yarn. It's a containment field. Also, you need to put your head down. I take a feeling that's too big to hold. Rage at immigration policies, grief, panic, and I knit it into a literal grid. I am forcing that chaos into line. Sometimes I ask myself, is it selfish to make a hat when the world is literally burning? And the answer is no, because you can't fight the fire if you yourself are burnt out. It's not just a hat, it's a sanity preservation device. And that is logic number 1 of craftivism. It doesn't just change the world, it keeps the maker from exploding. The hat has been displaced. It has been replaced by Hazel and Elsa, and I have a feeling I'm not going to get much done on the hat during this video, but we do what we have to do to protect both ourselves and those around us. Then there's community. Knitting has always been louder than people think. Take the suffragettes. These women were organizing, marching, getting arrested, and they were knitting. In prison, they weren't allowed paper, but they were allowed yarn, because that's a woman thing. And they would take that yarn and they stitched messages into the fabric using color coding: purple, white, and green. On the surface, it was ladylike handiwork. Underneath, it was a whole resistance movement threaded through their laps. And go back even further to the American homespun movement. Women gathered at spinning bees, proudly wearing plain homespun, itchy cloth rather than the imported British cloth. It looked like domestic work. It was actually an economic boycott. Every rough shirt and uneven shawl said, we would rather be uncomfortable than complicit. And that's the power of community craft. You look around and realize, oh, it's not just me losing my mind in my living room. We're all in this together. Fast forward to 1987. The AIDS crisis has been ignored, but you couldn't ignore a quilt the size of a graveyard. 3 by 6 foot panels stitched with names and grief and fury. It forced the world to physically see the body count. And in 2017, love them or hate them, the pussy hats proved one thing: a simple pattern replicated by thousands creates a visible army. It says, I'm not knitting a sweater for my husband, I'm knitting a helmet for a revolution. Knowing I'm part of that lineage makes me feel a hell of a lot less lonely on a Tuesday night. I can tell you that. Which brings us to logic number 3, the Trojan Horse. My body becomes a billboard. Look, I know this hat is not going to change the law, and I know yarn isn't legislation, but it stops me from stopping. It turns my paralysis into movement. And right now, that's a victory. The Melt the Ice hat is cute to 90% of the people, but paired with this jewelry, it's a direct critique of ice. It's a scream wrapped in soft wool. And that's the trick. People come up to say, oh, what a lovely hat. And that's it, trap sprung. Suddenly we're talking human rights. It lets me carry my values into places where a protest sign would get me kicked out. It's rebellion, covert ops style. So here's the deal. I can't stitch the world back together with this one video, but I can decide what I want to do with this pair of hands, even if it's just petting these 2 girls. I'm going to finish up the hat, put it on my very anxious head, and go out there anyway. To my appointments, to the post office, to the days where everything feels like it's on fire. You don't have to knit a protest banner tomorrow. Maybe your first act of rebellion is just finishing the project you were working on when everything fell apart. Either way, this video is over. The knitting rebellion, it's just starting.